Hello YouTube pipers, Double O Pipe here. I feel like I'm at a loss. The challenge is over, so I wonder why I'm sitting here talking to this screen, because I feel like the whole reason for it is kind of over. Here I am again, and I'm going to light up some country squire shepherd's pie in my Savinelli Roma 673. Or maybe I'm not. Too windy for that, I reckon. Using my Sherlock Holmes tamper. Well, I've been thinking about decades ago when we used to read westerns all the time. And westerns these days are not in fashion at all. And a lot of people will say it's because we treated the Indians badly. And then they'll say, you don't call them Indians anymore. They're indigenous. Whatever. Well, I'm afraid I'm an old guy. I'm a codger. And to me, they'll always be Indians. A rose by any other name is still a rose. Still having a problem keeping these things lit. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because there's a group on YouTube called Booktubers. And I have been watching several of them. There are three of them that I watch regularly. And one of them, his name is Michael K. Vaughn, has a theme for June. It's called June on the Range. And all the month of June, people are supposed to read westerns, which he did last year, and it seemed to be pretty enjoyable to those who got into it. So I thought I would mention that in case any of you like westerns, or if you like to read westerns. I know I do on occasion. Excuse me. And also there are a couple of other booktubers who are involved in that. One is named Criminali, and the other is Roy Reads Anything. I watch them regularly and I enjoy their posts. So much for passing that on. I smoked my brand new pipe last night and put on about a 2-minute video talking about it. And somebody told me about that tip. I don't know if you can see it or not. I forget what he called it, but he said it would burn my tongue more easily than this would. Well, it wasn't so much my tongue that got burned as the roof of my mouth. So I thought I'd set that aside for a bit and go back to another old favorite. And suck on this one for a while. Hunter is asleep as usual. About time for him to go out, so I might keep looking over there to see if he gets up. Anyway, I thought I'd go back to Georgia again, if that's okay with you guys. See if I can tell this one. This one is a little longer than the other ones I've talked about. Still the same age kids though, Clyde and me. And we were at grandmama's. Don't know if it was for Christmas, because we always went at Christmas, or if it was that particular summer. But anyway, Clyde had gotten out of the house and he was hiding from me because he was tired of me hanging around him. He wanted to do something on his own. But I wasn't going to have that because I didn't want to be on my own. I wanted to be wherever he was. So anyway, I ran outside and looked around and looked around. I found him hiding behind a car. He had his BB gun in his hand. The old Red Ryder. I said, "What we doing?" He said, "We ain't doing nothing." He said, "I'm doing." I said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm hunting." I said, "What are you hunting?" He said, "I ain't thought about what I'm hunting yet, but I'm hunting." And he cocked the gun and he shot the tree over there and a piece of bark flew off. I said, "Can I shoot the gun?" "No, you can't shoot this gun. You don't know how to shoot a gun." I said, "Well, how am I going to learn if you don't let me try it?" So he said, "I don't know, get your own BB gun." I said, "My daddy won't let me have one." He said, "Well, that ought to tell you something." Then he saw a pig down the road. He said, "Watch this." And he cocked the gun, aimed over there where the pig was. He said, "This is how good a hunter I am." Bam! He shot the pig, and the pig went squealing off down the road. My mother was at the door and saw him. She said, "Clyde Lynn, what are you doing? You hurting that pig?" He said, "No." She said, "I saw you. You better not do that again." He said, "Yes." She said, "Ricky, how about open that door for me so I can put this in the car?" So I went over to the car and opened it for her. And while I was doing that, Clyde was hightailing it down the road. I said, "I gotta go, Mama. Gotta go catch up with Clyde." She said, "You behave yourself and you take care. Don't get in any trouble." I said, "Yes, ma'am." And I ran off down the road, huffing and puffing. I finally caught up with him and said, "How come you didn't wait up for me?" He said, "I didn't want you around." I said, "Well, I'm here now. What we gonna do?" He said, "I told you I'm going hunting." I said, "Well, what you hunting?" He said, "I haven't decided yet. We're going to the branch, I guess, and try to find something to hunt." And the branch was that little stream with brown water and just a little trickling stream that we used to wade in. but it was kind of the attraction because there wasn't much doing out there. Granddaddy's farm was separated from other farms by, must have been about 2 miles from anybody else. And for me, being a little kid, being out on that old dirt road, it was just red clay, old dirt road leading out to nowhere, in my estimation, because I couldn't see anything down the road. After we passed the fields, it was trees and trees everywhere. Can't seem to keep this lit. Anyway, it was always kind of eerie to me because when we got outside of the house, because that was right around the bend to get to the branch, and even the house was behind all the trees and a long ways off in my estimation. Things got kind of eerie to me because there was nobody around. It was really quiet except for maybe a bird's call or a crow's call, and the wind blowing in the trees way up there sounded kind of weird. And for me, it was I was kind of uneasy, except I was with Clyde, so I was okay. But anyway, we got to the branch and we looked around. And he said, "See that track right there?" I said, "Uh-huh." He said, "That's a deer. Maybe we'll hunt deer." "Oh, that sounds like mighty big for a BB gun." He said, "Well, see that track right there?" I said, "Yeah, what's that?" He said, "That's a raccoon. They come up to these water like this and wash their food in their hands." I said, "You don't want to shoot a raccoon, do you?" He said, "Maybe." And then he said, "See that track over there? That's a bobcat." I said, "Boy, you sure know a lot about the woods and what's out here." He said, "Yeah, I do." And then he got this grin on his face. I would come to recognize the grin later in life. And the twinkle in the eye. He said, "I know what we're going to hunt." I said, "What, bobcats?" He said, "No, we're going to hunt fairies." I said, "Fairies? What are you talking about?" He said, "Come over here, I'll show you." He said, "See all these mushrooms in that circle like that? And see how there's nothing in the middle of that circle but just dirt and dead tree leaves and stuff?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's a fairy ring. So there's fairies around here. We're going to catch one." I said, "Fairies ain't real." I said, I read about them in books." He said, "Yeah, the fairies and the brownies, you read about them. How they're always warring with each other and fighting each other." I said, "Yeah, but that's just stories. That ain't real." He said, "You think those are stories, but that little fairy ring right there, that's the proof. That's the proof. So we're gonna hunt fairies." I said, "Okay, we'll hunt fairies." He said, "Now let's take off our shoes and put them over here, and we're gonna wade down this branch into the woods, see if we can see anything. Because we're going to have to fool them. We're going to have to hide. And whenever they come out, that's when we're going to get them." I said, rolling my eyes, I said, "Okay, we'll wade down the stream here." Now, this was late in the afternoon, and I was already uneasy because I was always uneasy out there when it was so far away from the house, out in the woods. The sun was going down, and we weren't paying any attention to this. It was just that things were getting a little darker as the sun went behind the horizon. And we had walked a good ways up into the woods, and he said, we better get back to the road so we can be where that ferry ring is and we can catch us a ferry. And I said, okay. He said, there's rules to catching ferries, you know. He said, huh? I said, huh? He said, yeah, you got to give them a chance. It's got to be a sporting affair. There are two kind of ferries. There's the smart ferries and there's the dumb ferries. Now, the smart ferries are never going to come out, no matter what. But dumb ferries, they're going to come out because it's going to put some excitement into their life. They're going to try and elude you. They're going to try and stay away from you, but they're going to get in there. I was taking all this in. I said, well, what's the rule? He said, you got to walk in the water and leave little mud trails behind you. Because when you step into that mud, the mud comes up and leaves a trail as the water is moving along. I said, okay. So I started splashing around. He said, don't be splashing around. They don't want to know that you're actually trying to do it. This is supposed to be in a way that they don't know you're doing it, but they do know you're doing it. I said, that doesn't make any sense. He said, well, it doesn't to you, but it does to me. So anyway, we kept walking up to the road, and it was getting darker and darker, dusk. So the trees were beginning to merge with the sky in the darkness. And we were walking along, and I heard something go, ooh. I said, Clyde, what was that? He said, what? I said, that. You didn't hear that? He said, I thought that was you. I said, no, that wasn't me. That was something up in the trees. He said, it must have been a fairy. Come on, we got to get out of sight. I said, okay. So he said, let's go up to the road and we'll hunker down and we'll wait near that ferry ring. He said, you go on up ahead and I'll get down here and watch while you're walking up there. I said, okay. So I went walking up the road, kind of hunkering down like he was. And I got to the road. He said, be quiet now. And I said, all right. And then I heard something crack behind me, like a stick or something. I said, Clyde, you hear that? Didn't hear anything. Then I heard something across the woods, like something rustling in the branches. I said, Clyde, you hear that? No answer. Then I heard something behind me again, like another twig had snapped, like somebody was walking back there. The brush was rattling. I said, Clyde, did you hear that? No answer. I looked around, it was getting darker and darker. I yelled like, Clyde, Clyde. I was on the road and I was looking around, and all of a sudden, somebody behind me said, don't you move. I said, okay. He said, I ain't gonna hurt you, but I want your shoes. So I just stood there, about peed my pants. I was quiet. I just stood still. And across the road, I heard something go snap, and heard Clyde's BB gun go bang. He said, dang it. I said, Clyde, Clyde. He came running out of the woods. He said, what's the matter with you? I said, you don't see him behind me? He said, what? Who's behind you? Someone was behind me. He said, don't move. Stand still. I just want your shoes. He said, there's nobody behind you. I said, well, let's get the heck out of here because I'm about to pee my pants. He said, well, let me get the shoes. He walked over. They picked up his shoes and his socks. He said, that's funny. I said, what's funny? He said, your shoes ain't here. I said, what you mean they ain't here? He said, your shoes. My shoes are here. My socks. Your socks are here, but your shoes ain't here. I said, oh, what are we going to do? He said, let's get to the house. Go, run. So we ran around the bend in the road, ran up the street, ran past the fields and the fence, got into the house. I said, Clyde, what am I going to do? I don't have my shoes. What's my mama going to say? He said, I bet you it was one of those brownies who stole your shoes. And you know they give them to the elves, and the elves clean them up. So I bet you in the morning, your shoes going to be here all clean and everything. I said, you think so? I said, yeah, I think so. He said, what you should do is, you should go on to bed, and I'll tell your mama you don't feel too good, and that you want her to go to bed. He said, okay. So he went in there and talked to my mother, and I got in the bed, and I lay down. She came in there, and I pretended I was asleep so I wouldn't have to tell her I lost my shoes to the brownies. And she looked at me, and then she leaned down and kissed me on the forehead and put the covers over me good and walked on out. And I fell asleep 6 or 7 hours later because I was just worried, just scared, because whatever that was behind me sounded awful. So I finally woke up in the morning and thought about what Clyde said. And I got up real quick and ran out to the porch, and there they were. My shoes were sitting right there on the step, all polished and pretty. And I just heaved a sigh of relief. And Clyde came up with that smile and that twinkle in his eye and said, see, I told ya. I said, you sure did. You sure know a lot. I wish I knew as much as you did. I'm so lucky to have an uncle like you. And to be truthful, I was. Holy cow. I didn't realize how long I was talking. I hope that didn't bore you. Took me a long time to figure out that smile and that twinkle in the eye meant something was coming. He did like to play tricks on me. Okay, I think I'm gonna hang it up. Like I said, since the challenge is over, I feel like I'm kind of here by myself. Ain't that funny? But anyway, I know I'm not, and I hope everybody is doing well. If you like Westerns, go over to those 3 that I was talking about, Michael K. Vaughan, Criminale, and Roy Reed's Anything, and see what they say about June on the Range, which is starts next week. Anyway, if anybody likes Westerns, you can check that out. I will say, God bless, and hope all are doing well. Till next time.